Hey, my brothers and sisters, it's Josh Packard. Hey, today I want to talk about the book of Job and kind of bring some illumination to the book of Job and mine out some Christ because there's a character that comes in chapter 32 named Elihu, and I really believe he's a very clear picture of Jesus, and and I want to kind of break down up unto 32 and then kind of break down, and then starting at 32 is the major change in the book, which is the key to understanding the book of Job, because the book of Job is very cryptic to people mostly because it's gonna be kind of like the book of Revelation. Everybody's kind of stuck in this idea that everything the Bible says is something we should immediately obey, and we have that problem with the Ten Commandments. We have that problem with other places, the Proverbs 31 woman, or I mean, we have all these images that we look at the Bible not realizing that the intent of what he's saying is that this is wrong. You shouldn't do this. Like a line upon line, line upon line, here a little, there a little. If you go and relook at that verse, it's going to blow your mind. Put it in context, and it's going to be something that you should never do. Yet we teach that we should do it from the pulpit. So the book of Job is that same way. But the book of Job is to reveal your self righteousness. And not saying that you're like a self righteous hypocrite kind of person, but what it means is your self righteousness is your idea of what is righteous, your image of good that you've set up. Well, that is your determination of what you think is good and right and what God should accept. And that's called self righteousness, according to the scriptures. We've been called self righteous. I've been called self righteous 1,000 times, but incorrectly. So, anyway, to begin with this, I want to start in Hebrews 4:10, and then we're going to bounce back to Job because this is kind of like I want you to just kind of be floating around in your mind as we're talking. It says, "For in 4:9 in Hebrews, there remains therefore a rest to the people of God, for he that is entered into his rest, being God's rest, he also has ceased from his own works as God did from his." Let us therefore labor to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. For the word of God is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even to the dividing asunder of the soul and the spirit, and the joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intentions of the heart. That thoughts and intentions of the heart is the most hidden thing from people. The spirit and the flesh, people still argue about, and they don't even understand that quite yet. But the joints and marrow and the thoughts and intentions of the heart, that's the deepest thing. Well, Job was very self-righteous at the very beginning, and he didn't realize it. He loved God and he had a zeal for God, but not according to knowledge. So, like it talks about in Romans 10, where it says, "For they, being ignorant of God's righteousness and going about to establish their own righteousness, could not submit themselves to the righteousness of God." And that's kind of like what Job was doing, and he didn't realize it because he loved God. He did, and he was serving him. But what he was doing was according to his conception and not God's. So God called him righteous when he wasn't righteous, but that's what he does to us, so that he brings us to righteousness. See, everything is God initiated, and this is something that's so special about the gospel, is that the book of Job clearly shows, first of all, that we are completely blind and we're going about according to our own knowledge. Even when we're religious, even when we're Christians, we're still pretending. We're still we're still trying to serve the God of our imagination because we're not submitting ourselves to His righteousness. Okay, and this is great news because it means that even while you're a Christian, you're an enemy to God, and you're still not going to hell. You're still not being removed from the kingdom. God is still gracious and slow to act. He's constantly, teaching us and guiding us, even though we're in complete rebellion, completely unaware that we are in rebellion. Going to church every Sunday, smiling, waving, and having fellowship and all these things, and you're still dead as a doornail. So this is a major reason why I don't believe the way the church says that if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to hell. Because if that's the case, we're all damned. Because we don't believe Jesus. We don't believe that He's our sacrifice. We don't appropriate Him as our sacrifice. We don't do anything that we're supposed to do. Yet He still wrought our salvation. We're just as bad as those in the world. We're being our consciences are plucked free, and we're walking through in enjoyment and hope of the future and of an afterlife, while the rest of the world is still walking around condemned, having to medicate themselves through drugs, sex, through fear, through whatever they're doing to themselves, to however they get a release. But they're dependent upon these things in order to even just get by. So, anyways, folks, we've been given a great gift. By being a Christian, you don't get something for being a Christian. Being a Christian is the gift. Okay? All right, without further ado, let's get into Job. See, at the very beginning of Job, Job's offering up sacrifices for his family, doing all these other things. And then God sees Satan. Satan comes in with the sons of God, which is another thing because everyone thinks Satan's in hell, and that's not where Satan's at. He's separated from God, in his conscience and these things, but he's not separated physically. Okay? And that's kind of like us, is that because of our conscience and because of our own self-righteousness, it's like Jesus. Jesus was a foot away from everyone, and nobody recognized him, that he was God. And that's the way we are right now. If Jesus came and sat down next to us, we wouldn't recognize him. He'd look just like another person. We wouldn't know. He wouldn't press himself. We just wouldn't know. That's just, you got to take this burden off yourself. You can't believe enough. You can't do the works that you think are necessary for salvation. And if you're dependent upon yourself, you will never enter into that rest that God has prepared for those that love him. So, and the words that I'm trying to show you right now, and the things I'm trying to do, is to get you to enter into that rest. Because God sat down on the seventh day and he's resting. If God's resting in things concerning you and me, why are you worried? There's something to think about. Okay. All right. Well, and this is talking to just believers here today. Non-believers enjoy this, but this is speaking to people who are believers, not to those that are not believers. Okay, it is in a case that you can see that it was. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Just take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. Okay, and so if you kind of look at the chronological order of this, that Satan said, okay, he serves you because you give him everything, and if you took away everything he has, then he'll curse you to your face. And God says, okay, take it away. So Satan goes and takes away everything. Kids, his all of his substance, everything. Is a very rich man. God took it all away, and Job didn't curse God. Then Satan said, oh, well, if you curse his body, skin for skin. He says, if you do that, he'll curse you to your face. And God says, well, everything he is, but don't take his life. And so, Satan puts all these boils and everything else on him and everything, and he's just completely, his health is gone, everything, he's in pain daily. He still wouldn't curse God. Okay, then along comes his friends, and God's like, I'll see, And so his friends, 3 friends come and they sit, and these friends are very concerned for him. They're good people, and they sit and wait for 7 days with him in silence before they even open their mouth. I can't be around somebody for 5 seconds without opening my mouth, as you might be able to tell. And they sat there and waited for him for a week, and until he finally spoke. But then during their banter, the 3 men represent 3 types of attacks. By works, by your images, by your each one of them represents a different way in which you can be attacked, in which you can bring about judgments. Well, then Job answers them back. Well, you don't see until the very end where Job, it like reveals his real heart. It took his 3 friends to reveal his heart, and they were trying to help him, and they were trying to condemn him. They didn't know what they were doing. But it took all that time up to chapter 32 of his friends accusing him and him defending himself and them accusing him till he finally revealed what was in his heart, and that God was not just in what he was doing, that he believed that it was his right, and it was, God should not be doing this to him because he did all these good things for people, and because he did. So his friends finally got him to reveal what was in his heart. But it wasn't, they weren't doing things correctly either. They were condemning him, and without cause, and not knowing the truth that we don't have, like Nick Knudsen says, we don't have the authority to determine whether or not we go to hell, or whether or not the life that we should live. We don't even determine that. God is determining that. We don't. He doesn't have to give an account to us for anything. He created us. He's the sovereign king of everything. We don't have to give him an account. We don't even deserve life. But it's like you've got to get in that state of mind with God, that we need to get in that humility, that we got to be grateful for all things. Even, anyway, it sucks. I mean, but that humility with God is so important, because without it, you can't have rest. You can't take his rebukes. You can't take his judgments and learn from them, because you're gonna retreat back into your self-righteousness. So, like, say a Christian, I'm gonna use this because men understand it. And this is just a small aspect, but I want to kind of get it to where you can use this to kind of see the formula which we use to overcome our battles, which don't work. And so I'm going to use masturbation, because that's what all these men's groups, all they sit around talking about is porn and masturbation. Porn and masturbation, that's all they do. Blah, 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 blah. And so what they do is they'll come together as a group and moan about how they're still trapped in their porn, and they're masturbating and blah, blah, blah. And so what they do is all week long they devise these means to be accountable to each other to not masturbate. And, they're just like, oh my God. So they work really hard, and all week long they're trying not to masturbate. But then they get back together again, and they've been masturbating all week. Well, it doesn't. First of all, there's nothing in the scriptures about that. I mean, it's just ridiculous what to even be concerned with this. But the fact is they put so much emphasis on their masturbating that it's always present in their mind, and they never overcome it. It's always stuck. And so it's like with Job. He was always concerned about his sins, whether or not his children were failing or falling short before God. He was always concerned about the failure. And that's not how you approach God. That's not how you have fellowship with God. Rather, if you don't like the way you are, whatever you are, your only hope is to spend your time and set it on Christ and knowing him. Because as you know him, you become like him. So why waste your time in your sins? The only reason your sins are being mentioned in the scriptures is so that you can know that if these things become the focus, you're looking in the wrong direction. Because I'm going to tell you what. Anyway, God will make you as he wants you in the time that he wants you. By you trying to fix yourself, you're exalting yourself above God and saying that your way is right and his way is wrong. Because whether you know it or not, God is the king over your life. He is the Lord, and he is the sovereign. He is the one that transforms you, and you don't even know what into until he does it. So your best bet is to rather quit trying to quit your shit that you're doing and get to know him deeper, so that he will fashion you according to the tool of his making, what he needs at the time. The other day, a pastor asked me what he thought my gifting was, and I'm like, I go, whatever God needs at the moment. I don't have a specific gifting set. I don't care. There's certain things that I do love, the scriptures more than anything, and there's other things, but I want to be open and available to what God needs every day for us. Okay, and if you're looking towards an idea of what a Christian ought to be, you're gonna fail, because that's your conception, not God's. Okay, so let's start right here in 32, and you guys should have read, all this. You guys should know about Job already up to this point, so I don't want to get into all that. But let's start right here, and this is after the three friends of Job stopped talking for a minute. So these 3 men ceased to answer Job because he was righteous in his own eyes. Then was kindled the wrath of Elihu, the son of Barachel, the Buzite, and the kindred of Ram against Job. Was his wrath kindled because he justified himself rather than God? Now, this is something that we need to see, that Job wasn't actually righteous. God called it as it was in order to bring it to be, because this is the truth. God seeing the end from the beginning. Job ended up righteous, but he was self-righteous, and then he actually at the end he's going to have the righteousness of God. So, and then also against his three friends, his wrath was kindled because they had no answer and yet had condemned Job. So everything previous to this is all suspect. You guys, when we're looking at everything up into 32, you need to take with a grain of salt. You need to say there's something wrong with their arguments. There's something not right. And so, and these are going to be familiar arguments that you're going to hear, especially from your own conscience when you're trying to weed your way. And not only that, from other Christians, from the radio. You're going to hear it from John MacArthur. You're going to hear it from, James McDonald. You're going to hear it from there's one other one that I was, Adrian Rogers. Yeah, those guys are like the three friends of Job right there. If you kind of see what I'm saying, they each come at you from another way. They're all putting the emphasis upon you and your performance and your ideas and what's hidden in your heart. And they're constantly trying to remind you of your failures, which then it makes you scramble to fix yourself. And so Job, when he's arguing back and forth, he's like, but we need that in our lives too. We need condemnation in order to raise up what's really hidden in our hearts. So, and don't get me wrong, I don't like the teachings of those three pastors I just mentioned, but I do believe they serve a purpose, and God has them in the kingdom where He wants them, because they really make you look at yourself and have a hard look at yourself, so you wear yourself out, so that you can come to this place of rest. Okay, now I've highlighted several sections. We're going to go from 32 to 33 and 34 and see how far we can get. He says, and then in 18, I want to go to 32:18, and I'm going to start showing you why I think he's a how do I say, this is Jesus right here. I'm going to show you this is a picture of Jesus. Elihu is a picture of Jesus. He says in 18, for I am full of matter or substance. The spirit within me constrains me. Behold, my belly is as wine, which has no vent, and is ready to burst like new bottles. I will speak that I may be refreshed, and I will open my lips and answer. Let me not, I pray you, accept man's person. Neither let me give flattering titles unto man. And this is very important right here. Let me not, I pray you, accept any man's person. And this means the image, what they want to be perceived as. Okay? And then he goes on, wherefore, Job, I pray thee, hear my speeches and understand to all my words. Behold, now I have opened my mouth, my tongue is spoken in my mouth. My words shall be of the uprightness of my heart, and my lips shall utter knowledge clearly. The Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty has given me life. And this is where I see him as the only begotten Son of God. If you can answer me, set thy words in order before me, stand up. Behold, I am according to thy wish in God's stead. I am also formed out of the clay. And this is Jesus. But this whole time Job's saying, oh, I wish God would give me an intermediary, someone I could order my arguments against so that I can show my cleanness. And Jesus is like, I'll be that dude. And he says, surely you have spoken in my hearing, and I have heard the voice of your words, to Job, saying, I am clean without transgression. I am innocent. Neither is there iniquity in me. So this is what Job is, what he's saying. He also says, behold, God finds occasions against me, and he counts me for his enemy. He puts my feet in the stocks. Behold, in this you are not just. I will answer you that God is greater than man. Why do you strive against him? For he gives not account to any of his matters. This is great. It's like, so you're going to go ahead and, God doesn't answer to us. We answer to him. and this is really great because all of our prayers all the time, like demands and stuff to God, or I do this all the time where I'm like, oh, well, how come I have to struggle? Look at all these assholes. They're doing so good. I even get caught up in this stuff. And God's like, oh, it's because I want to. Chill out. And I'm like, oh, all right. It's the way it is. God wants to, period. So, for yes, God speaks once, yes, twice, yet man perceives it not. In a dream and a vision of night, when deep sleep falls upon men and slumberings upon beds, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instruction. Wait a minute, I thought you believed. I thought you sought out God. I thought you. He says, that he may withdraw man from his purpose and hide pride from a man. He keeps back his soul from the pit and his life from perishing by the sword. He is chastened also with pain upon his bed, and the multitude of his bones with strong pain, so that his life abhorred bread and his soul dainty meat. His flesh is consumed away that it cannot be seen, and his bones that were not seen stick out. Yes, his soul draws near unto the grave, and his life to the destroyers. If there be a messenger with him, an interpreter, one among 1,000 to show a man his uprightness, then he is gracious unto him, he says, deliver him from going down to the pit. I have found a ransom. Jesus. The only reason we don't go to the pit, all of us, Christians, non-Christians, everyone, is because God found a ransom. God used himself as a ransom. That's the only reason we're saved. Because Nick, you love this part, because this is the part that says that we don't pick whether we go to hell or heaven. This is something that God has done. You're only saved because he found a ransom, being Jesus, period. Not because you believe, and not because you go to church, or because you do anything. He says, I found a ransom. His flesh shall be fresher than a child's. He shall return the days of his youth. He shall pray unto God, and he will be favorable unto him. He shall see his face with joy, for he will render unto man his righteousness. So God's righteousness, God's going to trade you for your idea of righteousness with his own. But he has to do this through trials and sufferings in order for you to see the end of your understanding is wrong, so that you can finally rest and receive his righteousness, which is by no merits or by no means. It's just because he says you're righteous, because he loves you, period. Is it. Now, he looks upon men, and if any say, I have sinned and perverted that which was right, and it profit me not, he will deliver his soul from going into the pit, and its life shall see the light. His life shall see the light. Lo, all these things works God, oftentimes with man, to bring back his soul from the pit, to be enlightened with the light of the living. Mark well, O Job, hearken unto me, and hold thy peace, and I will speak. If you have anything to say, answer me. Speak, for I seek to justify you. If not, hearken unto me, hold thy peace, and I will teach thee wisdom. This is why I know this is Jesus right here. This is just a total picture of the Christ right here. This is just amazing, because this is how God works. He justifies you to bring out righteousness. That's what he did to Job. He called him righteous when he wasn't. Okay? Everything that God does is to us, is he says that we've been saved to make us actually saved. So we had to be saved first before we can even believe, before we can do anything. That's why Christ had to save the whole world, because from that position, you have to be saved first in your own conscience before you can even perform the will of God. Before you can even see him or begin to know him in any way, you have to know you're saved. You have his righteousness. You have to know this. And saved, I don't mean saved from hell. That was taken care of on the cross. Saved means to be righteous as Christ is righteous on this earth. Only the righteous can work the will of God. If you are still unrighteous, if you're still going about to conform to your images of golden Christianity, you're still unrighteous, and your works condemn you. It's just the way it works, people. Being good, God does not respect persons. He doesn't care what if you're good or bad. That's not what he's after. He's after what you are, the truth. Because the truth is those that can work the will of God, whether you look like Samson, whether you look like David, whether you look like, I mean, all these heroes of faith that we look through in the Old Testament were douchebags. So we really don't have really a high bar to meet as far as externally looking um, as well. You know what I mean? We don't, there's not much there. You're pretty much where you are is where you're at. Relax and enjoy it. Because his righteousness is a lot better than yours. Okay. I'm going to keep going a little bit further. But I want you guys to see this stuff. This is amazing for us. I mean, Job had to suffer, and luckily so that we don't. I mean, and that's amazing because that's why Jesus went to the cross, so that he took our punishment instead. So that everything God's doing is only to get us to come to the knowledge of his righteousness. He's not punishing you, and he's not putting a magnifying glass on you. He's not even looking at your sins. He's doing everything he does is in order to bring you into fellowship with Christ. That's all he's doing. Whether it be good or bad in your life, it's to bring you to fellowship, not to punish you or to fix you or to scold you, and you know. And this works for non-believers too. Everything that God did to me when I was a non-believer was to bring me to the place of belief. And then everything he's done since I've been in the place of belief was to bring me into fellowship with Christ. And it was not comfortable a lot of times. I can honestly tell you, if people told me what I had to do before I came to the kingdom, what I would have to suffer, if someone told me that before I even came in, I probably wouldn't have done it. On top of that, I have not even shed blood yet. I've not even lost blood for the faith yet. So, I mean, I'm a pussy. If I'm ever saved, it is because God has done a miraculous work with me. Because I do not, I'm a sissy. I mean, honestly, I get all crying when I'm uncomfortable. When God puts trials on me, I'm not happy. I'm a little sissy. And I know nothing like Job, nothing like Jesus, nothing like the apostles. I mean, to even entertain the idea that my belief could save me is like ludicrous to my own self. I mean, it's unbelievable. Okay, so let's go ahead and go. It says 34:5. For Job has said, I am righteous, and God has taken away my judgment. Should I lie against my right? My wound is incurable without transgression. What man is like Job, who drinks up scorning like water, which goes in the company with workers of iniquity and walks with wicked men? For he has said, it profits a man nothing that he should delight himself with God. Therefore, hearken unto me, you men of understanding. Far be it from God that he should do wickedness, and from the Almighty that he should commit iniquity. For the work of a man shall he gender unto him, and cause every man to find according to his ways. Yes, surely God will not do wickedly, neither will the Almighty pervert judgment. Who has given him a charge over the earth, or who has disposed the whole world? See, this is great. It's like, who has given God a charge? He is the generator. He is the creator. He is the everlasting God. He is the one that does what he wants to do. We are just lucky to behold it. I mean, this is great because this takes all the burden off you people. It takes the burden off you so that you can just enter in. Know that everything God does is because he loves you. He'll never leave you nor depart from you. Okay, and then I want to get you to 35 because 35 has a really cool place in it, and this is what really turned me on to Job a long, long time ago. This is like my favorite passage right here, and this is great. He says, for you have said, what advantage will it be unto thee, and what profit shall I have if I be cleansed from my sin? And sin doesn't mean your bad deeds, your sins. Sin means this always being underneath this idea that you're not right with God, that you're not good. He says, I'll answer thee, and your companions with you. Look unto the heavens, and see and behold the clouds which are higher than you. If you sin, what do you do against him? Or if thy transgressions be multiplied, what do you do unto him? If you be righteous, what do you give to God? Or what receives he of your hand? Your wickedness may hurt a man as you are, and your righteousness may profit the Son of Man. By the reason of the multitude of oppressions, they make the oppressed to cry. They cry out by reason of the arm of the mighty. But none says, where is God, my Maker, who gives songs in the night? Who teaches us more than the beasts of the earth, and makes us wiser than the fowls of heaven? There they cry, but none gives answer, because the pride of evil men. Surely God will not hear vanity, neither will the Almighty regard it. Although you say you shall not see him, yet judgment is before him. Therefore trust thou in him. But now, because it is not so, he has visited his anger, yet he knows it not in great extremity. Therefore does Job open his mouth in vain, and he multiplies words without knowledge. And I'm going to do a little in 36, bear with me. He says, and Elihu also proceeded and said, suffer me a little, and I will show you that I have yet to speak on God's behalf. I will fetch my knowledge from afar, and I will ascribe righteousness to my Maker. For truly my word shall not be false. He that is perfect in knowledge is with you. Behold, and this is where I see this is Jesus. Behold, God is mighty, and he despises not any. He is mighty in strength and wisdom. He preserves not the life of the wicked, but gives the right to the poor. He withdraws not his eyes from the righteous, but the kings are they on the throne. Yes, he does establish them forever, and they are exalted. And if they be bound in fetters and hold in cords of affliction, then he shows them their work and their transgressions that they have exceeded. He opens also their ear to discipline, and commands that they return from iniquity. If they obey and serve him, they shall spend their days in prosperity, and their years in pleasures. But if they obey not, they shall perish by the sword, and they shall die without knowledge. But the hypocrites in heart heap up wrath, and they cry not when he binds them. Okay, guys. This reminds me of Revelation, whenever the kings of the earth, whenever the wrath of the Lamb is being revealed against them, is they rather than asking forgiveness and rather than humbling themselves, they command the rocks be fallen upon themselves. They want to hide from the wrath of the Lamb, which is really silly in the first place, because whoever ran from a lamb? Anyways, folks, take heed with Job and come talk with me. If you guys have an issue, or if you want to know more about it, get a hold of me, or Nick, or Jansen, or Art Holmes, or we can go down the list. Get a hold of these guys and ask, argue, do whatever you want, because I'm waiting. All right, you guys, have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon.